don't berate us or becurse us here at the top of the show like they usually do. So I'm going to BS for 2 minutes here while we wait to see what's going on. Make sure that Twitch is working. Sometimes it does not like me right at the top of the show. Looks like I'm live. That means we're all live. We're all live. Great. So we have a couple different topics to cover today. Not a ton of business to get to. I'm going to briefly recap the recap from last week. We had a really great discussion on Friday. If you did not catch that, please go back to the YouTube archive and check that out. We're definitely trying to reach 10,000 followers on YouTube, so if you can subscribe, check that out. Please do. I tweeted out some links this morning to salient sections of the recap, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing if you choose not to, although it's all genius. Every single bit, except for the first 2 minutes, of course, where I had technical problems and my internet died. So, that being said, I want to give a brief recap of where we left off last session. So, as I mentioned on Friday, I thought the players were going to defeat the second ogre after taking a pummeling from the first ogre, and then probably go into some sort of short rest and then tackle the cave again. They did not do that. They were triumphant over the ogre, and emboldened by their own success, they went further into the caverns, and mostly through a combination of sheer dumb luck and also them wondering why the bats were making so much noise, they went and found the villagers right away. Which I thought was going to be another excuse for them to get out of the caves and take short rests and then go back into the caves. Here's what we're learning during disorganized play. Your GM prep does not mean a lot. Well, your expectations of what you think the players will do will most likely be completely foiled by their actual actions, which is fine. That's why we're here, right? To kind of brainstorm how's it going to play out in real time, what to create options instead of creating a guaranteed plot or a very firm fixed plan of action. Sometimes you can ask the players, like I have mentioned before, that like I have just for my own personal style, I have a private Facebook group, so if I want to message my players and say, what are you guys thinking next session, you can kind of get a bead on where they're tentatively headed. I will say that isn't always true, and they don't always stick to that, and also it causes a moment where there's suddenly a dramatic round of like overplaying. You know what? I have to pause the stream for just one moment here. My agent is calling. Yeah, having a Johnny Hollywood moment there. Hey everyone, welcome to The Life of an Actor. You never know what's going to happen next. Sorry about the sudden silence there, but you never know what's going to happen. Honestly, my agent just wants me to re-up my contract, which is good news for everyone involved because I like my agent and I like to think that they like me. That's for my commercial agent. There we go. So, the point I was going to make was when you send out like a ping or a feeler saying, what are you guys planning? Just so I can get an idea and kind of prepare. What are you guys planning to do next session? Suddenly everybody, like, there's going to be a flurry of messages behind the scenes that go, well, wait a minute, now, what do you think he's really asking? Players go into panic mode at that point, which is normal. Like, that's what they're expected to do. Not necessarily full-on panic, but suddenly everyone will have a lot more discussion about what they think is going to happen, and things get, the stakes or the situational awareness gets heightened when you do something like that. So I don't often like to ping the players with, what do you think, what do you think you're going to do? Situations where that's called for is if there are really two momentous options in front of you and you just don't have time or the inclination to plan them both, right? Like, I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, okay, you guys were traveling on the road to Waterdeep and we're planning to reach Waterdeep within the next 3 or 4 days, but you've seen this light out in the field up on top of the mountain, and you've become curious about it. Are you planning to go off and explore this whole like side adventure thing that you didn't really have planned, or are you planning to continue your way onto Waterdeep? How important is this lighthouse thing? I'm not trying to advocate one way or the other. I just want to have a better handle on what do you think we should do. You can ask your players that, but they may not abide by it. Oh yeah, no, I think we definitely want to check out that tower. And then they go 3 rooms into the tower and they're like, wow, no, we really needed to like deliver these goods to Waterdeep. Like they need the plague vaccine, don't they? So, but I think it is legitimate to at least try and get a feel for when you have 2 giant preparation areas ahead of you where it's really dramatically divergent branches of the plot line. I think you're allowed to ask the players if that's what they're planning to do, so you can at least, if you tell them like, I need a little bit of time to prep because it's such a big shift in momentum of what you guys are planning to do. But in most situations, like the situation we have in front of us, it's not necessary, right? So they could have taken a short rest and gone back in which case I had some ideas in terms of how the cavern would reset, but they didn't, and that was fine too. So they told the villagers to hang tight, and they decided we don't want to get ambushed by anything else that's in this cavern. And they didn't know, like, there's so many branches coming off, they didn't know how many of them looped around, came back, how big the complex was, how many goblins were in here. Like, they had legitimate concerns about being ambushed. Doesn't necessarily make them like the smartest tactical players because they had used a lot of resources, and for them to keep pushing on was definitely a bit of a stretch. But that's a gamble that they took, and it paid off for them for the most part. So they entered the rest of the caverns. They found Jorgen, that's my code name for Harshnag the Grim. I deliberately did not name him Harshnag because I didn't want them to be mouthing off about it to other players, and then other GMs like crossing their eyes going, well, wait a minute, how did they encounter Harshnag? You're not supposed to meet him till like the end of chapter 3 or whatever. So I've decided Jorgen is his first name. That's fine. It's a perfectly acceptable bit of misdirection. They met him. He's doped up. He had been clearly attacked and captured by dragon cultists, by the Cult of the Dragon, and wasn't really sure even like how he had gotten into the Dripping Caves or fallen under the sway of the goblins. Great. So they met him. They made an ally out of him, but he's honestly like almost as weak as the rest of the villagers are. He did ask, where's my axe? I have to find my axe. They think they're maybe going to find it in the rest of the caves. I've, at this point, decided that's sort of Harshnag's out, is that he's got to go look for his axe. He's got to go find it. The dragon cultists have it. It's not conveniently nearby, as is so often the case. I feel that's a little cliche. That's a little tired. So with that, they went into Boss Hark's kind of headquarters, domicile, whatever you want to call it, and got ambushed by a couple goblins and Boss Hark himself, and took out 3 of the 4 goblins who attacked them before Boss Hark made an escape up the Area 7 chimney, and they decided not to pursue him. And they did not encounter any of the other residents of the Dripping Cavern, so they did not encounter the black pudding, the ooze, whatever it is, and they did not encounter any of the non-combat goblins. I'm going to assume that Boss Hark goes back into the caves and takes care of that. He rescues them and evacuates. And if I really want to be a jerk, I will populate those areas so they look like maybe they had a bunch of treasure. They didn't even go past the rolled boulder position as far as I remember. Let's pull up the Dripping Caverns and take a look if they would have gone past there. So, yeah, they would have. I did not draw it properly on the map. So that's sort of my bad, but honestly, I don't. They're not missing much. I can change the map so that they would have not passed by that later and called it good. So I can retcon that a little bit. That was a mistake on my part. Honestly, my understanding is there's still some treasure that's coming to them out of from the D&D Adventures League launch event. So I'm going to have to find a way to fit that treasure that they legitimately should have gotten in there. Because I don't think they're going back to the Dripping Caves. I don't feel like that's... I don't think they have any plans. They're going to go outside. They decided to make a long rest. I allowed them, gave them XP to level up to level 3, like halfway to level 4. So they're going to take the villagers back to the village. So that's where we're at. We're going to be back in Nightstone. So, once again, for any of you, what happened to my Nightstone map? that's way out of bounds. All right, let me move that back over. I moved the wrong thing. I'm not sure what I just moved. Okay, come on, Nightstone map. There we go. A little weird. Yeah. So they're going back to Nightstone. This encounter key isn't 100%. Correct, but who cares? So they're going back to Nightstone. Why? And this is where we get into... So let's talk about Crisis in Nightstone, what's going on in Nightstone. When we last left our intrepid party, they had ignored all of the threats to Nightstone that were about to happen. So that group of 20 orcs came barreling through. They did not care about that, which is fine. They were only 2nd level. They were probably right to ignore 20 orcs, including an Eye of Grumpsh and orc chieftain. They ignored the party of 5 elves who came through and said, "Hey, have you seen a bunch of orcs? Because we're about to murderate them." Yeah, they went that way. They're going to the human village. At which point, the elves were like, "Ugh, that human village." Like, they didn't, the elves were very dismissive and haughty, and let's be honest, openly racist about how much they did not like the humans. So that's fine. That's fine. So they left Nightstone to their own devices. They knew that there were Zents still there, along with 3 of the guards. They heard one of the guards get murdered by the orcs, and they let it go. They went into the Dripping Caves and decided that that's enough for them. They're gonna do their duty, discharge their responsibilities, and they're going to let the Zents and the 3 town guards take care of whatever they needed to do. So that's where we left things off. So I called this section Crisis in Nightstone, and I feel like that's the next chapter of the, not full on chapter of the story, but that's the next session. That's where this episode is going to focus on, is what happened at Nightstone with the orc attack and the Zents and whatnot. If I was a good, well-organized dungeon master, which I clearly am not, or I would have no need to host this stream, I would have rolled out the combat. I would have figured out how many orcs have died and been wounded, and whether the Zents were triumphant or ultimately defeated, whether Kella and Zolkin survived, etc. I am not a good DM in that respect. I'm just going to have to decide. I'm just going to probably DM Fiat, make a call on how many survived and how many didn't. And I think the most interesting call here is to definitely have the orcs have taken over the village. I think there's a possible scenario where the Zents could have kind of like held them off in the gap, and the elves would have kind of come in on the backside and put a pincher move on and really taken care of, probably like slaughtered off the orcs. But I think, in my mind, probably it's more dramatic for the orcs to have taken over the town. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it sets up an interesting combat scenario, which they haven't had a big, long, brawly fight, really. So that's not, that's something that's on the table for us. They have had sort of like a hit and run, like, let's pick off. An ogre comes out, he's going to tank, and then the goblins are going to shoot arrows. Like, it was sort of more of a cat and mouse type of combat. It was tactical, but I would like to run a big set piece battle. I think that would take most of the night. That would be fun. That would be fun. So that's one reason to do it. The second reason is to just demonstrate that there's consequences for making these decisions. You decide to let the orcs pass by. You did not turn back and run to help, warn the village. You didn't stop them or harass them or anything like that. It's the Saving Private Ryan scenario, right? Where they come upon the Germans who have captured that radar installation or whatever, and Tom Hanks is like, well, we got to clear these guys out. And the rest of the dudes are like, no, we don't. Like, we can go around. They will never see us. And Tom Hanks is like, and let the next 5 guys get ambushed? Like, no, we're doing this. Ultimately, he makes a bad call, right? I mean, I think he's making a call that's a moral decision, and in terms of a tactical decision, a tactical command decision, he makes a very bad call there, considering how many guys of his die and get wounded in that ambush. It makes for a very interesting, powerful conflict and scene, things like that. But so obviously, our game is not anywhere near as hard-hitting as Saving Private Ryan. But I want there to be an analog to I don't want to say I want to teach them a lesson, because I don't feel like that's the proper role here. I don't make this decision that the orcs have overrun town and captured Zolkin and captured Kella as a way to punish the players for not doing the right thing. That, to me, that's not fair. That's kind of that's playing mean. It seems petty and vengeful from a metagame perspective, to go, oh, you didn't do what I wanted to do and you didn't take the bait, so I'm totally going to screw you on all of this stuff. Now, if I really wanted to totally screw them, I would wipe out the town and have Kella and Zolkin like completely murdered, and have scenes of, just butchery everywhere. And maybe even the orcs have just moved on. They spent the night there and they're like, oh, we got what we wanted and we're gone. I don't like the idea. It feels vindictive, and I don't think that that's a good tone or example to set at the table, and particularly in an Adventurers League game. They made a choice. There are going to be consequences for that choice. That's perfectly legitimate, but let's make the consequences interesting and give them a chance to redeem themselves for, I don't want to say poor judgment or lack of judgment, because I think that call could have gone either way. Like, they were legitimate in thinking the villagers are in trouble. We need to go find out what's going on, because they could be in the middle of a ritual sacrifice and we could be stopping something far bigger than 20 orcs. And there are 8 guys at the, there's I don't remember exactly what the number of Zents were. It's like there's 8 Zents rode in, there's Kella, and there's 3 guards. So there's 11 of them, which is not great odds, but then there's 5 elves coming right behind them. And the elves all talked up, how great they were with a bow and stuff like that. That's part of it that I actually honestly need to dispose of a little bit, is like, why didn't the elves do a better job? But the point being, like, I think they were justified in making the call that they did. I want there to be consequences for that action. I don't want it to just be like the game's on pause while they're investigating another part of the world. But I don't want to vindictively punish them and try and teach them a lesson about not listening to the DM swinging the clue bat in this particular case. So how do we make these consequences interesting? I've already basically said I want at least Kella and probably Zolkin to be captured and either imprisoned someplace, or, I mean, you could even do the whole, like, tie them up in a stockade in the town square or whatever. But I think the orc forces have definitively taken over Nightstone. I think the chief, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but that's not a big deal. I think if he can capture those two, if he can capture the ringleaders, Kella and Zolkin, then I justify that by going, well, he's smart enough to know I can probably ransom these guys. They seem important. Or they're smart enough to go, hey, you know what? We surrender. We're very well connected. We can get you paid off if you spare our lives. And that's a classic Zent play on top of it, right? So that makes 100% sense. So I think that's your opportunity for redemption, is you can actually... One thing that I put in my notes was Zolkin was such a jerk to the players that I think they're going to get a certain amount of satisfaction of, number one, he got his comeuppance. Like, that's literally what I put in my notes when planning for this eventuality, is that Zolkin gets his comeuppance because he was such a snob and such a, just, he really kind of rode the players pretty hard about how they were not well equipped to do anything, and that he had the situation well in hand. So him getting his comeuppance is going to be a big payoff for them. And secondly, them having to rescue him leads back to that Zent favor thing that I wanted to curry. I don't know if you have gone back and watched some of the previous installments of Disorganized Play, but I think there's some great opportunities to get the Zents indebted to the party, and then they can pay off that favor in ways that the party might not expect. Specifically, I feel like the Cult of the Dragon airship comes out of nowhere in terms of later on in, like, chapter 5 or 6 or whatever it is, when they actually go to see the Oracle, or first go to see the Oracle, they come out with this set of subquests to go adventure around, and this Cult of the Dragon airship just shows up because Snort, the ancient red dragon decided he wants to screw with the players by giving them a gift. And that's like, I feel like, again, I haven't gotten all the way to the end of the adventure, but unless Snort is a major character, it feels extremely weird and intrusive to have what's essentially sort of an insane ancient red dragon make this bizarre gift of generosity. And it also creates this dynamic tension on the ship that's like, do they really trust the cultists or not? I think it plays a lot smoother and feels a lot more organically streamlined or embedded into the overall adventure if we have a callback to the Zentrum, say, hey, remember you did us a solid back in Nightstone? We're here to do a solid for you. So that's my reason for keeping those characters captured, alive, etc. I think everyone else can get murder-rated, that's fine. I think we keep the elves out of it. The elves showed up, you know, honestly, like 10 minutes too late. The orcs have already like stormed over the bank, breached the walls. There's smoke and shouting and blood and mayhem on the other side of the wall. And they looked around and were like, we don't really want to swim across here. There's only 5 of us. We're not sure what we're getting into. Let's pull back and go get some more forces so that if we have to take this town, we can. The other thing that I considered was that they slaughtered the orcs, maybe either captured or kicked out the Zens, and then set the town ablaze and burned it to the ground, where the elves are like, oh, we finally have a chance to eradicate the area of this human settlement. Great. It's on an island in the middle of a river. It's probably not going to endanger our forest to burn it down to the ground. Goodbye. I consider that seems a little bit aggro, even for wood elves. I think that's a bit too much. They had opportunities to maybe do that before, or maybe they didn't. But regardless, I don't think relations are that strained yet, especially with this leadership vacuum in Nightstone. So I think they just sort of assessed the situation and left. So where does that leave us? All right, that leaves us with the orcs having taken over town, captured a couple prisoners, and getting a long rest. So they're back up to full spells. They're back up to full hit points. BSB Care suggests maybe 25% of them were wiped out in the initial assault. That's not bad. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. There's an opportunity to maybe call in some reinforcements, or maybe they are allied with the goblins and send out a goblin task force, or maybe Boss Hark decides to round up some troops and head over to Nightstone and see what happened to the rest of his guys, although I think he probably has a pretty good idea. But we could add some more goblins into this mix, into this combat, if we so chose. All right, why would I say that? Why isn't 15 orcs with a bit of a tactical advantage, assuming that the players decide to attack the breach in the wall with the combat map that I designed? Why isn't 15 orcs a big enough fight? And the answer to that is there's 30 villagers. They're non-combatants, so I don't know. Although it strains credibility to think that at least Morak is not going to join in the fight after a long rest. Although you can argue they have several levels of exhaustion. You know, they're going to have at least 2 or 3 levels of exhaustion, so maybe they're not great fighters. But I think it's fair to give the players a couple of allies to potentially chip in, right? Obviously, the people in Nightstone are not great warriors, or they would have been able to defend their town better, and the guards would have been better suited to defending the town from the goblin takeover. The party also has Jorgen or Harshnag. again, he's got several levels of exhaustion, so he's not at full capacity, but he could very well be at full hit points and just be at disadvantage on all of his attacks. At plus whatever Harshnag is, even just armed with a Great Club, he is going to swak for some massive damage, right? So that's why I say let's give let's give them a little more grist let's put a little more gristle in the meat grinder and see if we can't kind of juice the forces a little bit. Maybe this is a miscalculation. If it is, I can always have the stragglers toward the end of the combat be weaker and not fully recovered, or have some levels of exhaustion themselves, or be the guys who are legitimately wounded. Maybe they're limping, maybe their arm is not doing well, etc. So that's what I'm looking at for tomorrow night's session. Is they're gonna break in their long rest. BSB Care brings up the question: what if the players think that Nightstone, like the village, is just a lost cause? We're gonna skip it. I don't think that's very likely, because at this point Morak has not given them an additional quest, right? So Morak has not said, oh, by the way, so-and-so got killed in the attack on Nightstone. Please take this information to her second cousin's brother's wife's aunt who lives in Bryn Shander and and deliver this information. So Morak has not given the quest out, so they really don't have any leads to follow up on in terms of, we're done with Nightstone, let's just move on. They could potentially go back into the caves. To me, that turns into just kind of a very simple, they spent overnight, right? So in that case, I want there to be consequences. Boss Hark came in, he cleaned out whatever he could clean out. Maybe they can go and encounter the gray ooze that's lurking in the last side passage. But other than that, the place has been essentially completely cleared. Unfortunately, like, Boss Hark got away with his treasure too. So those are their two options, really. Is like, do we go back in the caves, or do we take these guys back to town? It also, a third option that I have is to attack them at night during their long rest, or make it clear that the forest isn't safe, or otherwise screw with their capacity to take a long rest. I don't, just for the sake of getting them to level 3, because you can only level up after a long rest, I've just decided I'm not going to screw with their admittedly not terrific plan of just leaving the cave and then camping in the woods overnight. Like, if the villagers thought the woods was a safe place to camp, they would have just stayed in the woods rather than going into the cave. Whatever. So I think, again, no plan survives contact with the players, but I think there's a really good chance that they're going to go back to Nightstone, in which case I need to think about some things to set the scene. If the big supermass combat goes badly, I would love to have a giant miniature for Harshnag. I should really, that's something I should try and figure out how to do between now and then. I'll have to dig into my Reaper minis and see if I can find a nice giant mini. That would be super fun to have one of those guys. Otherwise, I can get maybe one of the Storm King Thunder mini blocks. It's tough for me to get invested in the random miniature collection. I have so many unpainted minis already that buying pre-painted minis randomly out of a block is a little bit discouraging or unappetizing. Farquaad mentions maybe Nightstone harbors a shipment of Nazi/Orcish treasure. So one of the things I've thought about is, instead of Morak giving out the quests, instead of him giving a quest that's like, deliver this sad news to some far-flung relative that you don't know or care about, but just do me a favor and I'm going to pay you 100 gold or whatever to go do this while I take care of town. I think there may be something, like literally like an Indiana Jones thing, where he takes one of the kegs of ale and smashes it open, and there's this stash of like magical chainmail and then, you know, a sword and a bunch of jewels and stuff like that. You know, once all the stuff, like all of the ale pours out of it, like he had this stuff. Yeah, BSBK brings up a good point, which is if things are really going bad, the elves as the scouting party or the larger elven force that they have sent off can come back in and save their bacon. So that's another thing I have in my back pocket is the elven cavalry can show up and save the day if the party is really struggling. And that feels perfectly legitimate and justified and won't be too much Deus Ex Machina. So we have a lot of these sorts of like balancing acts, right? So we've been talking on Twitter a lot about maxing hit points and kind of how encounter building is really a tricky type of endeavor and getting your fix on exactly what the ideal number of adversaries is versus your party strength, etc. And I look at the options that we're talking about right now, which is give them some allies, have unexpected cavalry, you know, in your hip pocket as a backup. Give the enemies a little legitimate reason to have their forces bolstered, but still have plans for some of them to potentially be wounded, disabled, not, you know, at the peak of their fighting capability. Those are the sorts of DM judgment calls that I think can help you, whether you are an experienced GM or an inexperienced GM, make an encounter dynamic, challenging, and exciting without having to do a bunch of math. All of the options that we have discussed here for our Crisis in Nightstone are tied into the story. They are callbacks to things that have been established earlier in the fiction. And that's where, even if it is a Deus Ex Machina, it makes sense for the elves to show up and take care of people and go, oh, well, we went back to get more forces and it took us longer to get back. Besides, it's just a human village where we weren't in a hurry. We didn't care if the orcs reinforced Nightstone. We're planning to dismantle it anyhow. And their tactical advantage, please, we're elves. We'll easily dispatch them. That plays into their attitude. It plays into the story. It reinforces what the players already have learned previously. Coming up with those sorts of options is far more useful to you as a GM than trying to decide how many hit points does that guy have. Should I give them two-handed swords instead of long swords? Should I give them a great axe? Should I give them a catapult or whatever you like? Whatever kind of mechanical things are going through your mind in terms of how do I fix this encounter? It's far more important to have story and narrative-based factors that you can tweak on the fly and keep in your hip pocket for things have gone bad, suddenly an arrow comes out of nowhere and plunks into, you know, the second rank of orcs that are bearing down on our heroes. So, I mean, that's where I feel like the value of talking through this stuff really comes to bear, right? Because you can argue about hit points and the encounter building rules and the mechanics of the system as much as you want, but in the end, if you tell a good story with a satisfying payoff, your players aren't going to remember that it was that clutch roll of a 16 in round 9 that mattered. They're going to remember we were up against the wall and these jerks came and helped us turn the tide. You know, I'm not saying that we should steal their thunder, but having these options, these story-based options available to you makes your game stronger as opposed to making the system stronger. I just think of this stuff off the top of my head. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. All right. Shiny Pikachu XXX asks, if there are 15 orcs in the village and they start losing really badly, would you have the orcs run away and start burning the village? I think that's not a bad idea. It does give the players the opportunity to make a choice of, are we going to try and put out the fire, or are we going to follow up and finish off these orcs? In my experience, players are super bloodthirsty and will either split the difference, and a couple of them will try and tackle the fire, while the rest of them hunt down the orcs, or just the whole party will hunt down the rest of the orcs. It's that simple. It's a good point. You know, what is the orcs' backup plan? I guess maybe drop the drawbridge. Something I definitely need to put some time and effort into before we run the game tomorrow night is, what is the current condition in Nightstone? Have the orcs already started burning buildings? Have they raided the windmill of grain? Like, or you know, the goblins have already picked over the village to some degree. What's sort of left for the orcs to do? I also considered having the orcs retreat back to the keep. Like, maybe the town is fine and the orcs are just living high on the hog in the keep, in which case this becomes a very difficult fight for the party because they have to jump that gap. We'll maybe put some orcish archers on the roof or on the wall and have them start picking off the party. Like, that's a demonstrably tougher fight than what I've got planned. One of the reasons I want them to attack through the breach in the wall is because I'm going to pull it up here. It's going to wipe out the screen. I have this whole map prepped for this orc battle that's basically sort of like in a real-time, like, I'll be able to have like a 5-foot scale battle map for them to play this thing out on. So I want to get some use out of this thing. It is available to you. I've seen people on Twitter using it, thankfully, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I kind of would like to actually get some play out of this thing, since I took an hour or whatever it was to make this thing. It goes back. It gives you a decent. It's basically 5 pages wide and gives you a decent amount of territory for everyone to fight over, and you can put a fairly good number of troops on this thing. And I would keep in mind that these lines around the windmill are elevation marks, so you could put orcish archers either up in the windmill or up on that hill and have them shoot down into the remains of the tower and across the stockade wall and such. So don't forget the 3-dimensional opportunity here for orcs having the high ground and the party having to fight their way up to them. So that's I put work into it. I want to get some juice out of it. On the other hand, I may just freehand the map on my portable battle map. That's a good question. All right. We've got about 15 minutes left before I turn things over. I want to take a look ahead at what's coming up. So we talked a little bit about Morak, and last session we talked a little bit about the floating tower at the end of... let me just get rid of that. There we go. We talked about the floating tower at the end of the chapter where they get this weird... where after having rescued a village that's been the victim of a cloud giant bombardment, they get picked up by a friendly cloud giant. So, there's a couple things. BSB Queer has a question. Why not have the orcs playing the role of the GIs at the end of the movie where they're making their last stand type of thing? Yeah, that could be a good thing. Where they set up an ambush. They know that somebody's probably coming, and have the orcs try and draw the players into an ambush. I like that idea. Yeah, I like that idea. I think I would have to draw a whole new battle map in order to make that happen, which I'm not opposed to. I need to put some ideas into where in Nightstone. Again, if we just go back to Nightstone. What's this map? I did a player's map of Nightstone, apparently. Yeah, I did do a player's... map of Nightstone. So if we go back to Nightstone, where's a good place for them to draw the party into an ambush? Is it by the remains of the inn with that barn on the side and the temple? Like, can they kind of pull back into that corner? That seems like the most tactical place. On the other hand, they've got a pretty significant choke point set up by this tower that they came through. So I'm inclined to kind of keep it as it is, but maybe they have an orc scout who like runs back to the village and starts sounding the alarm, and then maybe everybody runs by the windmill and the orcs begin pouring out of the windmill and doing this pincher move on them. Those are some great tactical like what's going to make a cool fight, and that's always something that you've got to ask yourself when you're going to put 20 figures on the battle mat, 20 enemies on the battle mat somewhere, and have them like what's a cool way to deploy these guys in waves? What are some interesting tactics that they can use? Definitely be thinking about ways that you can change this up other than the standard. You start 80 feet apart and then just gradually begin getting closer and closer and closer into hack and slash range. So that's a good suggestion. I will put some thought into that. Okay, looking ahead. So as I mentioned earlier, there's the bizarre Cloud Castle appearance that just shows up. I want to look at a couple things with that particular scenario. One, I'm not sure that guy comes back and makes another appearance and befriends the players and actually has an ongoing role. Like, I need to look through the rest of the adventure and just kind of plow my way to the finish line on this thing, so that I know like how big of a role does let me find the NPC. Let me figure out what his name is. That's not where it is. That's not where it is. There's a lot of options in this book, which is fine, but sometimes it makes locating things a little bit weird. So Zephyros is the cloud giant, the benevolent cloud giant. I need to find out what kind of role Zephyros plays later on in the adventure, because if he just kind of pops up and if his main function is to be a taxi cab driver, then I will find a different way for that to happen. And specifically what I am considering is that they travel a little bit, and they travel a little bit with Jorgen, and they find the cloud castle kind of floating in the air, abandoned. Jorgen speaks some sort of phrase in Giant, which causes the mystical cloud steps to descend from the castle, and then they go up there and they find out that the whole place has been raided by someone. The cloud giants are dead, and whatever the obelisk was is now missing. So that's, I think, and if Jorgen can repair the thing and offers to give them a ride to wherever while he goes on this quest to look for his axe, that's, again, an organic, streamlined way to essentially deliver the same results, get them to a place with a minimum of encounters. So one other thing that I want to show you while we're taking a look ahead, and this is something that I've put together. This is not available to everyone. I'm going to wipe out my face again. These are the quest lines for Bryn Shander, Golden Fields, and Triboar. And what this is this is a chart that I have made up saying who the NPC is who delivers this thing, as well as what locations it takes you to, what the reward is on the right-hand side, and on the very right-hand side, it will say if it ties into any other particular quests later on in one of the additional check. Guys, the mailman's here. That must mean I have to end my stream, right? So I think he's just going to leave whatever the package is. Who knows? Amazon comes to our house every day. Yeah. My agent calls. The mailman's here. I'm not just broadcasting from a hermetically sealed chamber somewhere deep beneath Los Angeles, everybody. So you can take a look at these. Hey, if you want to take the time to copy them down into your own shorthand, that's fine. You're going to have to go back and watch it on YouTube in order to do that. If you are a backer of our Patreon at the $5 level, we're going to send a message out. It's in a special Patreon folder. $5 and up every month. You're going to get access to some of these nice little bonus goodies that I've put together. I've put together a lot of materials for Chapter 1. Those are, this is the one thing that I've put out so far that is not free to everyone in the Dropbox folder. I'm going to continue to provide both free and extended bits of essentially extras, web enhancement feeling type of stuff. So that's fair to give some stuff away, and some of the stuff that I put some extra effort into, you can have for supporting the channel. It's our way of motivating you to help support Saving Throw. We do a ton of different things, so I hope this feels like a tangible reward that will be useful to you. Otherwise, I guess you can just screenshot it off of YouTube, enjoy. I can't stop you from doing that, but that is the deal. Yeah, if you just signed up for the Patreon today, we will make sure that you get it. Don't worry about that. So you also get a ton of other things. You get some songs by Amy Vorpahl. This is not like the only reward that's going to be available to our Patreon backers. I can't remember if Amy's songs are at the $10 level or what. That's really our producers. That's our producers' call, and I'm not super tuned in on exactly what all the various rewards are, but I'm going to encourage someone on the team to try and put together a list so people understand what they're getting. All right, that being said, why did I even do that? I wanted to look at the 3 different locations, the 3 different main questline locations, and see, coming out of those areas, what were the rewards that were being assigned out of those quest lines, assuming that all of those NPCs actually survived. I just realized that the one that I showed you on the on the screen isn't even 100% complete. It only showed the first 5 for each of them. Whatever. At any rate, Bryn Shander, initially to my reading, was the most interesting combat. I really loved the feel of it. I loved the fact that frost giants were attacking, etc. Like, I just really liked the setup defending the city walls. It felt very Helm's Deep, kind of epic. But when I went through and actually made a list of the various quest lines and then what the rewards were for all of them, it's way better for the party in terms of a payoff to go to Tribor. Tribor? It still seems weird to call it Tribor. I like Tribor is the way I like to pronounce it. But that's fine. If you look at the rewards that come out of Tribor, assuming that everybody survives, there's at least 4 magic items, access to the Harper's Inner Circles, and a giant Slayer sword, which, let's be honest, out of all of this stuff, that is the coolest item. I don't care who you are, that is boss. I want to give away a giant Slayer sword. That's just the way, that's what I want to happen. In a thing, called Storm King's Thunder, players are just going to be burning for that if they get it. You could theoretically run Bryn Shander and then have those NPCs give away the Tribor quests. I'm considering it. I haven't decided. I just don't know. I just don't know that seems like I'm really deviating off of the module as written. I think it's within my purview, even within Adventurers League, to do that. But I think I'd rather, for everyone's sake, for my sake, for the player's sake, for your guys' sake, I'd rather stick with one and kind of keep with the module as written as much as possible, rather than really super modding it. I'm already going to mod it a lot if I decide to kill off Zephyros, the cloud giant, and have this weird murder theft scene going on. So I've got a lot of tweaks that I'm already doing. I don't want to like totally hack the thing into 15 pieces. So that's our look ahead. Does Morak give some sort of like blackmail bounty quest? Not blackmail, but like illicit good, black market goods type of. So he smashes this cask of ale open, and the mead flows all over the dirt ground in the streets of Nightstone, and then he cracks it open one more time, and they find this package wrapped in waxed canvas that has all of his stuff inside of it, and he goes, I've made some deals on the sides. I need you to deliver a few things to some friends of mine, wink, wink, and sends them off on their quest to Triboar. And there's plenty of ways to tie that in. Secondly, I'm very much leaning to getting rid of Zephyros. I think it's a weird, barring his reappearance later on in the adventure, I think there's a lot of like, through divination, the gods have foreseen that you play a pivotal role in this. And to me, the characters just have not done enough to earn that status of you are the anointed ones. So I'm holding off on playing that particular card. It is a 100% legitimate card. That's fine. But we've got 11 or 12 levels worth of adventuring. Wow, at this point they're level 3. So we've got like 7 to at most 10 levels of adventuring to get through here. We have plenty of time for our heroes to assume the mantle of their destiny and become the unravelers of this nefarious plot, right? Like, I don't need to hit them with that at level 3 or level 4 or level 5 or whatever. And then finally, looking ahead, I'm looking at Triboar. So that's where I'm going to put my focus in terms of prep, those quests. Honestly, one of the things I've done is made little quest maps that show which cities are involved in each of these quest lines. So when you go, okay, I'm doing Golden Fields, these are the 6 major cities that are involved in that. So I can get an idea of like how much travel, where are they going to be going, that sort of thing. Those maps will also be available to you guys. I don't know whether that's going to be a freebie or whether that's going to be for Patreon backers. Probably a freebie. Don't quote me. That's more up to Dom. So it is 3 o'clock. I am going to wrap it up here. I feel like we had a nice talk. We talked some theory. We talked some down and dirty details. I've got a much clearer idea of the things that I need to do in order to prep tomorrow night's session. I think there's a big smash and trash battle on the horizon. I may prep my players that there is a big smash and trash battle on the horizon and get them pumped up for that. I haven't decided. I want to just wipe my face out and give you the saving throw calendar for the rest of the week. So tonight we've got something really exciting going on, right? Tonight at 8 o'clock we have Thornwatch happening. That is a game that's on Kickstarter. It's designed by Mike Selinker and Rodney Thompson. The guys from Penny Arcade are, it's involved, it's their world, etc. It's a card-based RPG. We interviewed them last week. I believe David Crennan did. You can catch that on our YouTubes. Or you can watch the actual game being played tonight at 8 o'clock. I don't remember everybody who's involved, but I know Amy Vorpal's playing. It should be a fun session. I believe good old XG Grav Galati is also, he's either playing or DMing. So that's going on. The status of Monday Night Dungeon Fight. Monday Night Dungeon Fight will be back next Monday night. So that's just been on hiatus while we filled in with some Realms of Rothaeon. Last night was the final installment. If you've not backed the Kickstarter, go take a look. If you're at all interested in interesting world building and you're interested in Dungeon World, Realms of Rothaeon, or you're interested in good audio tracks for your fantasy game, Realms of Rothaeon is something to check out on the Kickstarter. Very good. So it looks like David, Megan, Amy, and Tyler with XG GMing. So that's a good crew tonight. That'll be super fun. Tomorrow night, we have a very special evening of Barky's Brigade / The Lost Brigade. We expect to get some new traffic from Twitch, so please come visit in. Please be our regulars. Show the new people who are going to be coming to our stream for the first time exactly what kind of fun, supportive, interactive atmosphere we have here on Saving Throw. I really feel like we run a unique offering, and we want to showcase that in the best possible way. So please join us for Barky's Brigade tomorrow night. It's going to be a special installment. We expect a lot of new faces, so please be there for that. I will not be there. I'll be running my game Thursday at 4 o'clock. We'll be back with Disorganized Play, our recap show. I will talk about what happened. Friday night, we have, again, a Call of Cthulhu, Don't Never Tell Me the Odds, crossover Black Bag, I believe. That's the case. But we're back on Call of Cthulhu Black Bag with Wes DMing on Friday night. Unless I'm misinformed. But I know that's the game that's happening. Saturday, Dungeon World Dark Sun, followed by Phoenix Dawn Command. And Sunday, of course, you can catch up on all of the magic. So, again, please tell your friends. Please join in with us tomorrow night. Get those YouTube subs up there if you can help us do that. That would be great. But most importantly, if you can join us for Barky's Brigade tomorrow night, like I said, we're expecting a rush of new faces to appear, and we want to put our best foot forward. And thanks to loyal viewers like you, I feel a real connection to this community, and I hope that you feel a real connection with everyone on our side of the camera. We do not get paid for this. We use your money to help improve the quality of the streams that we offer, to try and provide the materials and interesting things that you want to see. And we do it because we love it, and hopefully you love what we do. So there you go. I want to thank everyone for joining me. I will have Q&A time on Thursday during the recap show like I usually do. We didn't do a ton of Q&A today. We did some great brainstorming. So if you have questions, you can drop a comment on YouTube. You can also ping me on Twitter at Dungeon Bastard. Those are all exciting ways to contact me. If you're a Patreon backer, you can definitely use the Patreon messaging system, and Dom will get those things passed forward to me. Other than that, have a great night. Tune in later tonight for Thornwatch, and until then, let's dungeon!